organised it. And thanks for that introduction, man. Like, it's brilliant. It's quite a young audience tonight, it looks like. I mean, I only finished uni a little bit ago. You can probably tell. So I'm going to talk about kind of what if you go down the conventional path of marriage and kids and all that stuff, I'm going to talk about what awaits in your future. So my wife and I have been married for 5 years now. Prior to that, we've been going out for 10. So we've been together for 15 years. My entire adult life, which is great. Like, obviously, that's great. Yeah. But things change, man. Things change when you've been together for a while, you know? Like, for instance, the birthday blowjob was downgraded to a hand job a few years ago. This year, it was a cup of tea. Come on, man. Like, it wasn't even brought to me in bed, it was just sort of balanced quite precariously on the windowsill. Like, a cup of tea for you there, if you want it. Okay, great, excellent. So, you know, that romantic spontaneity that you have in the early days when you're in your honeymoon phase and everything's great, that just fucking dies. Like, it did. Over time, right? It dies, man. Like, so, you know, when you first start going out and everything's electric, and you do like crazy stuff like have sex on a Tuesday, you know? Like the last time my wife and I had sex on a Tuesday was Shrove Tuesday, 2011. It was pancakes and Prosecco at the Student Union, which what I like to look back on as the rock and roll years. These days, right, if I want to have sex with my wife, the woman I love, if I want to have sex with her, there's a number of invisible hoops that I have to jump through. It can't be a Tuesday, for starters. It has to be a Saturday. It has to be a Saturday evening. And that day, that Saturday, I have to be a really good guy all day. I have to remind my wife that I'm okay and she doesn't hate me. So, you know, I'll get up early, take the kids out, be a good guy, give her some time, maybe pay her a few compliments, tell her hair looks nice, she's been, you know, she's a beautiful woman. Like, you just subtly put it, hey, you're beautiful. Just sort of in the kitchen, you know, just casually like. So, you know, I have to be a good girl there, I have to make a nice lunch, for instance, like, you know, we're talking like smoked salmon, cream cheese bagel, kettle chips. Like, not pom bears could be a deal breaker. Fucking discos, no chance. A disco's the worst crisp. So even then, I've been a good guy all day on this Saturday, right? Even then, there's no guarantee, right? She could very easily, she'll just say, oh, really? No, not tonight. I'm tired. Oh, I don't really fancy it tonight. Or as she said fairly recently, what are you doing? Her husband of 5 years tried to help, you know. So that was good for the ego. I responded by being a bit quiet with her over breakfast the next day. So everybody won. And I thought, is there anything like less sexy than a man sulking with his wife because she didn't want to have sex with him? I don't think it was. Perhaps a naked man wearing a pair of socks. But yeah, so that didn't go on. Right, so I have to jump through a number of hoops, right? On the other hand, if my wife wants to have sex with me, which she does on occasion, absolutely zero requirements. She doesn't have to put in any groundwork at all. In fact, if she wanted to, she could be a bit of a dick. She could, I don't know, just point out I've got a few more grey hairs. Perhaps like subtly insult a mate of mine. I mean, she could fucking kick me in the shin and badmouth my mother to my face. But that evening, if she so much as touched my leg, I'm good to go. Man, I'm pathetic, man, pathetic. So I spoke to my wife about this like a good few months ago, right? About, I don't know, 8 or 9 months ago. Sat down and said, look, I still love you, I still fancy you. I just feel like since we've had kids, that romantic spark has kind of gone a little bit. You know, since we had kids, we kind of become like work colleagues, and not the kind of work colleagues that flirt with each other in the staff room, annoyingly, but the kind of work colleagues who'd be like a bit annoyed to get each other in the Secret Santa. You know, maybe like try and do a swap. Secret Santa's pretty shit, isn't it? So yeah, so you know, it's like let's just try and reignite things. So we sat down, we had a conversation. She was good about it, and we suggested doing a monthly date night. Which, you know, obviously it's not a very original idea, but we thought we'll do a date night. That'll kind of let's get that romantic spark going again. Let's reignite it. And it started off really well. It started, you know, we did some good stuff. We went like salsa dancing, like sushi making. We went to the theatre, and then it was my turn again, my second go, and I literally couldn't think of anything to do for a date night, like nothing. So I bought a jigsaw of a hot air balloon. Seriously. And she was just like, what the fuck is this? So I couldn't, the day nights, man, limited. Like, what can you do for a day night? So she wasn't impressed by that. She wasn't impressed. And let's be honest, like, on a date night, once you're onto a jigsaw or a board game, you're only one step away from a Tesco's 2-for-1 meal deal in front of the TV, not really talking to each other. And that's what we've done for the past 6 months. That's what date night's been. That's where we're at. So on our last one, 3 weeks ago, I thought I need to do something to show my wife how much I love her. You know, I need to do something to impress her. So you might be thinking here, like, what's a weekend away, champagne, tickets to a show, perhaps a real hot air balloon ride. No, I thought I'll impress my wife by trimming my pubic hair. That'll show her, you know. If I'm taking care of myself, that'll impress her. And it's something I hadn't done for a while, right? But I remember when I was back in school, a friend of mine, he said, if you're tactical with the way you trim your pubic hair, you can gain an extra inch. And Lord knows that's something I could do with it. 2 points here, right? The first one, it is questionable that me, a 35-year-old man, is heeding the advice of a then 14-year-old with an eyebrow piercing who once took magic mushrooms in assembly. And the second point, I've been with my wife for 15 years. Did I really think I was going to fool her into thinking that I have a bigger penis? It's very questionable. Anyway, I've got the idea in my head. I've got to do it. I need to look after myself more. I've let things go, man, so I'm going to do it. So I needed an empty house for this, though. It's not, you can't just say, I'm just going to pop upstairs and trim my pubic hair. So you need an empty house. The problem when you have a wife and kids, you never have an empty house, ever. You just walk into a room, and there's a child there, or a wife, and you just never get any time. Like, never get an empty house. So I kind of, after the sort of weeks of trying, eventually she said, I'll take them to the park. So like, here we go. I've got an empty house. Ordinarily, within, I would say, 2 minutes of being presented with an empty house, a man is watching porn. Not me. I was going to do something altogether more wholesome, more productive. I was going to trim my pubic hair. The issue was, I couldn't find any scissors in the house. Right, so I looked at my son's craft box for slightly too long. Because I knew there's some plastic scissors. But no, I can't do that. I can't do that. So I settled eventually for some kitchen scissors. You know, the classic, like, big orange handles you buy from Wilkinson's. I thought, yes, it's acceptable to use those to trim the hair around my dick. Honestly. So it actually went okay. That's what I thought, let's embrace it, put on a podcast. It actually worked. I think I added half an inch. I was quite pleased with the end result. But then afterwards, like a few minutes afterwards, I suddenly felt just like riddled with guilt and shame. You know, the last task these scissors had performed was cutting up a Chicago town pizza for my son. And now I was using them for this, like, what have I become? So I just felt full of shame. I started like washing the scissors in the sink, like frantically washing them in the sink. I was like fucking Lady Macbeth washing these scissors in the sink. But the shame wouldn't dissipate, you know? I was just like, no, it's too much. It's too much. So eventually I just threw them in the bin. I couldn't look at the kitchen scissors anymore. I just threw them in the bin. Can't see, no. Oh, too shameful. Obviously, later on that evening, my wife went to the bin and found the kitchen scissors. She's like, why did you throw them away? My wife's from down south. Why did you throw them away, Andy? It was, my heart started pounding. It's like, shit. It felt like she'd confronted me with like texts from another woman or something. Not a pair of kitchen scissors in the bin. I couldn't answer, obviously. I couldn't tell her what I'd been up to. So I blamed our 4-year-old son. I said, yeah, he must have just put the scissors in the bin. Why the fuck has he been handling the scissors, Andy? Oh, shit. And I just couldn't think of an answer. So I just kind of went a bit weird and walked upstairs and shut a door slightly too hard. And just a weird atmosphere in the house. For like, yeah, a good few hours. Anyway, our date night was a couple of nights later. And it went well. We had Tesco's 2-for-1 meal deal, carbonara, profiteroles, chunky chips. Didn't really talk and watched Married at First Sight Australia. It was a brilliant evening. And that night we're in bed, and it's like it looked as though intimacy was on the cards. And my wife sort of made the first move to kiss me, and then suddenly I remembered the scissors. Shit! If she sees that I've trimmed my pubic hair, she'll remember the scissors in the bin. She's not daft. She'll remember all this. It's like, oh, I can't do it. I can't do it. So for the first time in 15 years together, I said, sorry, I don't really feel like it tonight. So yeah. How long have I been talking for? Sorry. Keep going. I don't want to like overstay my welcome. I've lost all track of time. But yeah, I love my wife. Obviously, I love her. She's great. I'd never consider an affair, right? I'd never have an affair. I'd never get away with an affair, you know? Like, she noticed that the biscuit tin was 2 bourbons down a couple of days ago. So there's no way that I would cover up a fucking paper trail leading to a travel lodge in Huddersfield. Because that is definitely what an affair would be for me. Like, even in my fantasies, I know my limitation. Travel lodge in Huddersfield. So I never have an affair, but I do sometimes think, you know, like what would we got together young? We got together when she was 18, I was 20. I sometimes think like, what would life have been like if I'd been single for a bit longer? Would I perhaps have been a Lothario? Would I have been a ladies' man? And like, obviously I wouldn't, but I sometimes think that. And I'm a bit, I'll be honest, I'm a bit pissed off about Tinder coming along like after we got together. So I compared, Tinder came along like after my wife and I met each other. It's comparable to my high school, right? I went to Ralph Thorsby High School just up the road from here. The year after I left, they knocked it down and built like an amazing new school with loads of new facilities. I compare that to Tinder coming out after I'd started a relationship. All these new opportunities, all this amazing new stuff to do, and I'm just never gonna get off it. So yeah, I sometimes think, would I have been a ladies' man? And I just don't think I would. So I never would. Whatever time I was born, I never would. So I'm going to finish with a story as to why I was never destined to be a ladies' man. And it's the story of my first ever girlfriend. Incidentally, my only other girlfriend. And this is going back to when I was 15, 16, I think we got together. To give an idea of the kind of guy I was at the time, I worked at Jack Fulton's frozen food shop in Headingley. I wore too much hair gel, and I was alarmingly thin. So I was a catch. Somehow I managed to get quite a nice girlfriend. We got together and things were good. We've been going out for a few weeks, and it got to the point where we had the conversation. You know, shall we take things to the next level? Shall we have sex? We like each other. And you know, when you're that age, these things take a lot of admin, right? So we had to wait for an empty house, which is also difficult when you're a child. Trying to bring back, yeah, anyway. And finally, I got an empty house, right? And I remember this because my mum and dad were going to see a Rod Stewart tribute act at the Village Hotel. And my brother was going to Quasar. This was questionable, because my brother's like 5 years older than me, so he would have been 21 at the time. I'm not sure Quasar's an acceptable activity for a Friday night. But anyway, that's something I remember. So finally we got this free house, so it was on the cards. My girlfriend and I were going to have sex. So I prepared for this. by going to TK Maxx and spending my entire Jack Fulton's frozen food weekly wage on a Kangol cap. This is around the time that Samuel L. Jackson was sort of in every film. There were obvious similarities between me and Sam. And I thought if I wear the cap when my girlfriend comes round, obviously I'll be irresistible. So I also, I went to the pound shop, I bought some joss sticks, and I bought the Dido album, No Angel. I listened to this again recently, it hasn't aged well actually. There's the one she did with Eminem, great. The rest, don't bother, don't revisit it. Would be my advice. But the scene was set, I'm wearing my cap, joss sticks going, Dido playing gently in the background. And the girlfriend arrived, wearing a nice dress, everything was on the cards. We went upstairs, and it was on, we were kissing on the bed, we were about to have sex. Right? It was just, this is something we planned for a long time, we were about to have sex. Just as we kind of at the pivotal moment where I was about to start taking our clothes off, there was a knock at the door. I said, well, that's really annoying timing. Let's just ignore it. So, for fuck's sake. Whoever was at the door then just kept pounding and pounding, and it became like the point where it's like, I have to go and see who this is. Perhaps my brother has picked up an injury at Quasar. It could be an emergency. So went downstairs. I said, just hang on there. Just pause the Dido album. I'll go downstairs and see what this is. We need to sort this out. I went downstairs. At the door was a friend of mine who lived on the cul-de-sac, wearing an Everton football shirt with Amakachi on the back, bouncing a ball. I said, "Hi Andy, do you want to play out?" To play out, Andy. So here, right, so this is kind of like where my childhood and my adult life kind of collided, you know. Upstairs, I was about to lose my virginity to a girl I liked. I was about to, enter this amazing world. Downstairs, there's a lad in an Everton shirt asking if I wanted to play out. A no-brainer, right? Tell him to, I'm busy, and then go upstairs. But here's the reason why I don't think I was ever destined to be a ladies' man. When he said, "Do you want to play out, Andy?" I said, "Yes." I said yes. My girlfriend left me like 2 weeks after that, never had sex. She left me for a tree surgeon, a weed-smoking tree surgeon with a hazardous work-lifestyle balance, actually. She left me. I wouldn't lose my virginity, this is true, I wouldn't lose my virginity for another 2 years. For that. But, come to think of it, how things are when you're married with kids and stuff, 2 years doesn't actually seem that long. I'd probably take it. So I think that's about it for me, so thank you very much, everybody, appreciate it. Just before I clear off, I just wanted to say a couple of things about Andy's Man Club. So you might be surprised to know that I have a day job.